everyone. Welcome back to the Up the Villa podcast. We have the whole crew gathered here today to celebrate the union of Unai Emery and Aston Villa. A beautiful marriage, if I do say so myself. It's great to have us all on the screen again. This is our match preview for our trip down to London this weekend to face Brentford. Do let us know your thoughts in the comments. We love to hear it. It's a great vibe at the minute. We are all #buzzing. So we'll get stuck in straight away. Brentford, a side that have had a very successful season so far, we'd say. I actually did tip them in our season preview, I believe, to be one to watch. So I have some bragging rights there. But they haven't won in the last 5 games. Meanwhile, Villa have won their last 5. So we are definitely having a stronghold from that perspective. But very happy to see my smiley friend below me, Justin, back on the screen. I'll start with you, Justin. I'd like to hear your views on our 5th consecutive win this weekend against Newcastle United. Have we lost you, Justin?
Where is he? He's not even there.
Oh my God, his big moment.
What
He's
an
froze.
amateur. He's only been off the pod for a week.
What are we going to do? So I think he's actually speechless, is what we can say after last weekend. So I'm going to give him a minute to compose his thoughts. In the meantime, we've got Luke and we've got we have got Luke and we have got Ryan. So both with this in mind, our great run of form, how are we feeling ahead of this weekend's trip?
Well, I hope it goes better than the start of this podcast. So that's the first thing. I hope that's the only bad thing that happens this week. But
Me too.
No, I'm excited. I'm buzzing. You know, it's one of them. And we're banging form. We're playing really, really well. I would sort of not err on the side of caution, but I'd sort of look at what we've just done to a side that have won 5 games in a row. And I think, yeah, you're in the moment, it's going great, but we've still got to maintain, you know, what we're doing and stick to what we're doing, which I'm sure we will do. But like what we saw from Newcastle, they were on a 5-game winning streak and they absolutely got demolished at the weekend. So I think we've still got to have the right mindset. We've got to take it one game at a time. We've got to stick to Emery's game plan because we've shown in, you know, especially the game against Newcastle, that subtle tweaks, we were doing stuff that we haven't really been doing. Like Ryan did his brilliant statistical analysis on Twitter, and we found out the conclusion that Mings and Conte didn't even pass together. And in all of the build-up in the games before that, that's been an important part of what we've been doing. So, you know, I think we'll have a plan, we'll have a system, we'll have a setup, we'll have our tactics, and it's just the new challenge, and we've just got to rock up there. I think is it called the G-Tech? I think it's the G-Tech, isn't it? We've got
awful name.
We've got to rock up there and just do what we do and do what we do away from home. And I think Justin's back on the screen, so
we've got you back, Justin. I think absolutely.
Yeah, I've changed my internet. What's a
it
nightmare?
Was looking ropey.
Absolute.
It was
yes,
looking
the back
ropey.
should be fine now.
We wanted to hear your thoughts on Newcastle. We're hoping now that we've got you back that we can have a little bit of positivity from the weekend.
To be honest, it's been really nice just sitting back, watching all the content coming out for once. I mean, the fan cam was, I've got to say, everybody, it was sensational. It's probably one of the best fan cams I've seen we've done, to be honest. I know that comes off the back of an unbelievable performance, and what a performance it was. I think, looking back, my time supporting Villa, I can't remember a complete performance that I saw on Saturday, you know, for a long, long time. I'm going back to runners-up under Graham Taylor that season, which was phenomenal, and runners-up under Big Ron that season was phenomenal. You know, you're talking that kind of level, you know, finishing runners-up in the league, you've got to have a very, very high level of consistency, performance, and a really good team as well. And I thought when Emery took over, we were all hoping he could do something with us. But I think if you look at the level of that performance, with hindsight now, looking back at it a few days later, it's a level I didn't think we could achieve within the next 18 months, 2 years, simply because I wasn't sure the squad as a whole was capable of putting in that level of performance over a 90-minute spell. But it just proves the coaching and the level he's got these players achieving. It's blown that thinking out the water. You know, they've that performance was as close to a perfect performance as you probably could write on a bit of paper before a game. If you wrote what you want out of a game, and it was against a team that are flying. They're not also ran. They're a team that are doing well in the league. The Champions League spots, 5 wins in a row, and we destroyed them. 3 goals, 1 disallowed for his little toe being offside. The post, the bar. Watkins has a couple of other efforts. It was an utter domination, dismantling of Newcastle United, and I think whilst that performance level, it'd be lovely to say we're going to play all that every single week. Realistically, that's not going to happen. But what we're seeing now is a consistency. We said at the start of the season, we just want consistency, and if we get anywhere near that level of performance on a consistent basis, we are going to be one hell of a team over the next 2 or 3 years.
You are right, Justin. And I think that you touched on a word that I was about to come to, which is what we named the C word earlier in the season, which was consistency, and something that we've longed for so long as Villa fans. It's we've had flashes of brilliance, haven't we? The odd game where we thought, wow, look at this, we're playing good football, and then it's all gone down the pan the following week. So to finally be getting to that point where we are being consistent is something that's so important, and it's something that we see from the top sides in the league, even some of these sort of new teams that are emerging like Brentford, that they're not even necessarily winning every week like Aston Villa do, but getting draws, picking up points, grinding out results is something that we haven't done for a long time. And it's what we're seeing now to get into that sort of top 8 position in the Premier League. It's all about just not losing, picking up points, grinding out results. It is the key. So it is great to see that we are finally getting to that point and building on that momentum. Ryan, we'll come to you. Luke touched on some of that excellent tactical analysis we saw on Twitter over the last couple of days. So you've clearly got a keen eye for looking into the nitty-gritty of the game. What do you think we can learn from that Newcastle performance that's going to be crucial for Brentford this weekend?
Well, all I done was put down into words what we've all been chatting to on the group chat, on the debrief, on the fan cam, on the match reaction. So for me, that thread and that article, it's a team effort. And, from whatever we've discussed, we're learning off each other and we're spotting different things in the game. And it's so good to be able to chat to you guys hourly. It's not even daily, it's hourly. That WhatsApp group is just pinging all the time. And the buzz for Villa at the minute that everybody's got. Everyone just loves talking about Villa at the minute. It's so good. And we go again. We go for win number 6 now against Brentford, and I'm impressed by them. I'm impressed by Brentford. I'm impressed how they operate. I am impressed with how they bring their players in, how they sell their best players and replace them. It's so good. The model that they've got. I did sort of fear for them at the start of the season because second season syndrome. I thought, you have that first cracking season and how do you build on it? But they have, and they're very good at what they do. I watched it's a 3-3 draw against Brighton, and I thought they were like a possession-based, like tick-a-tacker sort of team, but they're not. They're not. They're happy to give up possession. Like they had 28 possession that game. I know it was against Brighton that are very ball hungry, but I look back on some of their other games where they've got results against the top 6, the likes of Liverpool. They beat Liverpool. They got results against Manchester City, United. And in them games as well, it's low ball possession. So they're happy for you to have the ball and then they'll just try and counter you. And Luke shows a lot of the momentum bar charts when the Villa play. And I looked at a few of Brentford's ones. And in these tight games where they do allow you to have the ball, when they do attack, they seem to score. They seem to take their chances. And when you've got Ivan Toney up front in the form of his life, and he's banging them away like they do. It's such a dangerous weapon. But that's what's really impressed me. They've been so impactful, with the ball. They're direct, they're fast, they're clinical. And like, I think it was fourth. They were fourth in the league for scoring goals on turnovers. So yeah, they're very dangerous. That's what I'm saying. The midfield three sort of operate the way we did against Newcastle. Their attack and their go with Tony. And Tony's a great foil for him. He's a great link up. He's got 4 assists. I think he's made like 11 big chances as well. So they are very, very dangerous. And but you know what we're like. We always have a plan, and Emery will have a plan. And they do like to offer up opportunities, Brentford. They do give away a lot of shots. They block a lot of shots as well. They play with a back three, and they keep that box area very, very tight. And Ben Mee is in the centre of that, and he'll just throw himself at anything, wouldn't he? He's proper old school, solid centre half. So for us, it's on the deck, I reckon, looking for through balls. They're happy for you to have it on the wing, attack them down that left side. Moreno, what a joy. Can't wait to watch him again. Can't wait to see Buendia buzzing around again. And I think his through balls to an informed Ollie Watkins is going to be crucial. And I think it was Buendia, wasn't it, that played that through ball into Danny Ings when we got the goal there last season. But they are a bit of a bogey team, aren't they? They are a bit of a bogey team. All them games in the Championship, we really struggled against them. And it weren't until Gerrard left and there was a big outpouring of relief and we went and blasted them 4-0. So tough game. But I do fancy us. And like these games, I'm so chill heading into these games. It's crazy. It's like Saturday, I weren't even nervous. I didn't even think Newcastle were going to come and do a job on us or anything. I'm so relaxed heading into these games, knowing that Emery has built a master plan, and the players have got that much confidence and trust in Unai Emery. He's dishing out all these ideas and these plans, and they're coming off, aren't they? And the players are like, flipping out. This guy, he's elite, and you can just feel it. They're fully brought into everything that Emery's implementing in the squad, and it's flipping brilliant being a Villa fan right now. It's blooming great.
It's a bit of a foreign feeling. When I was thinking about this episode earlier today, I was kind of thinking to myself, do you know what? How weird is it going into these feeling confident and feeling like you're going to win games? It's like something that I've never had in my experience. You make some good points there, Ryan. I think you are our on-call tactician now, and an analyst. But I think just from some bits I was looking at today, they score a lot from open play, but they also get a lot from set pieces. So we're obviously aware of the threat of penalties and those kinds of things. So it's something we need to be aware of. But if we dive even more into some of the details, Luke, I'll let you pull up some of our stats head-to-heads. Recent memory is pretty positive with the 4-0, but like we say, especially heading to their place, it doesn't feel like we've had a great run of late.
No, it doesn't. But if we think about just Premier League era, it kind
looks a lot better.
It is a lot better. So we'll forget the Championship because hopefully we haven't got to think of that division for many, many years to come. So head to head, 1 win apiece, both at home, and there's been no away victories in that time in the Premier League. There's been 1 draw. Again, you can see it was Danks, wasn't it? Was it Danks' first game where we just obliterated them in 15 minutes? So the recent form running's it's okay for us. I mean, that graphic gets better and better, doesn't it? I mean, and like what I was touching on earlier, it is going to be a difficult game because I think Brentford are that type of team that they're not in great form, but they're a bit like what we used to be like on their day. They can beat anybody. I look back at when they smashed Man United early on in the season, and they were absolutely fantastic that day. So, we've just got to make sure. I just want to reiterate that we have to have the right application in this game, especially now, because we're starting to go into games now and like everybody's looking at this result thinking, oh, Villa should be beating Brentford now. So I think if everybody else is looking at this fixture, then I think we've just got to stick to the plan. And I think they're not informed. So I'd like to imagine that we can rock up and play our game that we've been playing recently. I mean, these graphics as well look better now, don't they? Their position's 9th, we're 6th. We've won 15 games this season. And yeah, that just looks all right to me. This is how they're lined up against... who did they play last time?
Wolves.
This is their line up against Wolves in the 2-0 defeat. Interestingly for me, I really, really rate Norgard in the middle. He's a really, really top central midfielder. Hickey and Rico Henry offer width out wide. I like De Silva. And Bremo and Tony's relationship has been brilliant in the Premier League. So, yeah, they are a good side and they're decent at home as well. This is their average position from that game as well. And they sort of hold a bit of width with their general shape as well. So, like Ryan was mentioning earlier, that I think there's going to be spaces in pockets of space for us to try and exploit. And this is their passing network, which again, it's actually not that bad, but it does show you the width of their team. And you're looking at, this area here, either side of Norgard, if we can get players in between those lines. And yeah, I just think that they're a club that try and do the right things, and they're still learning. And I think their fans and their manager would still say that they're a work in progress so far in the Premier League. I think their start to the season was really good, and they've remained really consistent for more than half this season. And I think now that they're starting to get that little bit of an inconsistency, it would start to put a little bit of not a downer, because they've survived and they're going to finish mid-table, but from where they were and where they have been, this little period in their form is probably going to sort of showcase their lack of depth at times and their lack of bench to come on and change it. I think they do tend to stick with pretty much the same team week in, week out as well. So this is where their Brentford's danger creation is. So, I mean, in that box there, you're looking at Tony's a massive threat, isn't he? And where they've conceded. So I think, in that area there, to me, that highlights, if you go back to this passing network, this little bit of space here, you can kind of see it in that area there, to be fair. So their style of play now, these graphics never do the opposition teams any good, to be fair.
That's another beauty, that is.
I think they are a lot better than that. And I think because they do tend to play on the counter a little bit, that's just how it's merged up. But I thought I'd show some context and show ours. So ours is getting slightly better. So you can see that the possession is getting higher and higher. It's getting stronger. We're getting more passing accuracy, and that comes with having more possession, short, intricate passes at times as well. So I'd be looking pretty much next season for ours to sort of try and follow this little sort of hexagon or whatever shape what you'd ever want to call that. But, a nice little solid shape in the middle should be what we're trying to be. So that's a little bit of like the stats and the breakdown of Brentford and what's to come. So pass you back to Hannah.
Just to nick in there, Hannah, you made a very good point about their set pieces. Them and Newcastle have got the highest expected threat from set pieces. But what I noticed on Saturday against Newcastle, and Luke gave Austin McPhee a lot of praise for the attacking ones, but defensively, and Justin will like this because I think you're a bit like me. You hate all the players coming back, defending corners, like every player in the box. On Saturday, they left 2 attackers up top, and it forced players back. So McPhee, I don't know, I just feel like he's evolved a lot more under Unai Emery. I don't know whether Emery's put more trust in him or they're working together more. But the ideas that are coming out and the way we're looking at set pieces is very good. So I'd expect something similar again against Brentford, knowing how dangerous they are.
Yeah, I agree. Something I noted, the two players up at the set piece, they're also quite a tall side, aren't they, Newcastle? So I think we're clearly taking note and actually listening to the set piece coach, which is a good thing. So Justin, after all that, we've just absorbed a lot of information in a short space of time, and we're looking at a Brentford side that they're going to be looking to set things right, aren't they, after a drubbing earlier in the season and also a bit of an inconsistent patch of form. What do you think then? Because we're talking about what I'd say are two very good tacticians. We've got obviously our magician Unai Emery, but I think Thomas Frank is going under the radar in terms of actually being a very good coach. Do you think it's going to be a good matchup, or do you think we're just going to be a bit too strong for them this weekend?
I do think we're going to be too strong for them, but that doesn't take anything away from what Brentford are and how they go about their business. Frank was given the job after Dean Smith, I believe, and he's done a fantastic job since then. And that's the way they go about their business. Not only do they use this Moneyball technique to bring players in and use them to increase value and then make profit, and then that's a sustainable way to run a football club, but they also do that with their coaches. They bring coaches in to work under their current coach, and then if they do really well, they get pinched and poached off to other clubs, and they've got somebody ready-made then to come in. And Frank is very much of a similar. I see him as very much of a similar mould as Emery. I watched a couple of his masterclasses on YouTube that they do, which Emery's is a really good one to watch if you haven't seen that one. And he thinks about the game very similar way to Unai Emery. He's tactically a little bit different, I think, but he's not afraid to change things up. He's not afraid to tweak systems. He's not afraid to look at the opposition and work out a way to try and counter what they're doing, which is very similar to what Emery does. And I think it's something that he will be very deeply worried about Villa, but he'll be thriving on the the opportunity to come head to head with what is an elite European coach. The two games I think that we've I'm not say struggle, but the teams have done pretty well against us. We're Forest at home and West Ham away, and they sort of sat back and didn't allow the way we kept to the ball and trying to draw them out, and they were very patient, and I think that to a small extent nullified us a little bit, where they didn't sort of aggressively press, which Newcastle did, which played into our hands. And I think something Frank might do is allow us to keep the ball in our own half, but also make sure that their players keep their shape. He will set them up in a way to nullify our threat down the left. I think everybody in the country knows that's where he likes to attack, with our left back. So that's something I think he'll look at to nullify Moreno. And I think he'll try and keep the midfield quiet. I thought the three in behind Watkins were the key on Saturday. I tweeted that before the game. I thought if we're going to get any joy today, then McGinn, Buendia and Ramsey have got to be on it. And boy, were they on it. So they're going to be highlighted as players that are going to be a threat for them. And I think that's something he'll look at. And Emery's got to come up with another plan. And I've no doubt he's got a plan in his back pocket, and he's just getting it out now. And he's sorting it all out on his laptop, ready to tell the lads. And they'll be more than aware of how to attack this game come Saturday at 3:00. And the joy of seeing Villa and watching Villa evolve over the last few months has been to see what Villa turn up week in, week out, to look how not only pre-match we set up to attack a team, but also during a match, when things aren't going quite well and something has happened, and it's been pretty flawless so far, but we will see times where we struggle in games and we're behind in games, and dare I say, we might actually lose the odd game occasionally. But that's when he comes into his own even more, because he doesn't see that as a negative. He sees that as a positive. He sees that as a way to go, right, okay, I've got to work even harder now. I've got to sort it out even more. I've got to delve deeper into my file of what I need to do. So I see it as a really, really interesting game. But we've got to play on their losses recently, 3 losses in a row. So, we need to start quickly. If we can get a goal, there's going to be mumblings and grumblings in the home crowd. we're on absolute fire at the moment, so our confidence will be high, I expect, from the first whistle. So if we can capitalise on that and get an early goal, then I don't see a steamrolling them particularly, but I do see hopefully what will be a comfortable win again on Saturday, based on their recent performances and how good we currently are. Because let's face it, we are a very, very good team now. So we've got to shout from the rooftops. And when we're in this kind of form, we have to be confident going into every game. And that's what I'll be on Saturday, very confident going into the game.
I think my vibe when I'm at the away games is I still tend to think that the home side, when we start having loads of possession, I get the vibe that I start thinking, who are these? Like, they can't come here and do this. It's Aston Villa. They're not that good. And every away game that I'm at, I get that same vibe. They all get a bit twitchy when we start having like vast amounts of possession. And I think that's going to be the same on Saturday as well, when we just start getting into our rhythm of having possession. And I think that the home fans just get a bit like, it ain't Man City. And then, I don't know, it's weird. I don't know. If any of you have been to the away games, I think you'll sort of resonate what I'm saying, that our possession football away from home, I think it shocks a few.
And that's what draws the players out, because the fans get twitchy. So the players come a couple of yards forward, then you've seen it against West Ham. They were very organised, wasn't they? They kept their shape, they kept their position. But when that crowd starts getting a bit like you say, Luke, then you do start to creep forward, and then your opportunities come. So I think it's going to... I'd love an early goal, because that would accelerate them coming at us a bit more quickly. But I think it might be a bit of a patient one, a bit of a slow burner, and really draw them out. And I'm talking like second half, grabbing a couple of goals.
Yeah. And I think it works. It's the same thing. I mean, if a team comes to Villa Park and they start having all the ball and we sit back a bit, the grumbling start, don't they? But equally, I think the Villa players are definitely going to be feeding off the positivity coming from our fan base at the minute. Just as much as they feel it when we're grumbling and we're nervy, they're going to be feeling our positivity as well, which definitely is making the difference, I think, because, John McGinn noted it after the game against Newcastle, that the atmosphere felt significantly different to how it did a few months ago. So it's actually a good thing, I think, either way, for the players to feed off the crowd. So one thing I did want to touch on just before we go to score predictions is probably a bit more of a broader discussion, and probably along the lines of Villa fans getting carried away. But talking about Unai Emery's tactics and sort of the recognition that Villa are finally getting. There's been lots in the media since the Newcastle game about, finally, are Villa going to get Europe? Is Unai Emery going to be in contention for manager of the season if Arsenal don't win the title? All these discussions, and obviously it's very interesting. But I think it's a good point to kind of touch on with teams like Villa and at times Brentford, the likes of Brighton as well, Fulham at times this season. They're all starting to ask questions of what we've traditionally called the top six or the top four. We've had discussions about this again in the group chat. It's probably been something that we've touched on the podcast, but I'm going to open this up to a bit of a discussion, I'd say, just to round off, about what we think about teams like Brentford and Villa making these moves in the Premier League. Because, Brentford, up until this little bit of a sticky patch, were similar to Villa and Brighton, really kind of pushing up the league. Do we think it's important that this recognition continues for teams like ours that are asking the questions and are pushing for these European places? And is it good? I mean, I'd say it's good for competition as well. Good to finally see some different teams in the mix. So I'm opening this up for a bit of a discussion with you guys, because I know you'll probably have some thoughts on upsetting the big six.
Well, I'll kick it off and I'll let everyone else say theirs after me then. So, isn't it weird how years and years ago it used to be the top six? So we always used to just talk about the top 6 each season. So whoever got the top 6, that would be what you talk about probably the next season. But then when Sky and everything, all whatever, it then become the big 6. So the narrative now, it's a big 6, and it's sort of like a closed shop, isn't it, of the big 6. Like, if Brighton are in the top 6, they're not involved in the conversation because they're not in the big 6. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think I was listening to something earlier this week, and someone was saying, so if Newcastle are now going to be in the top 4, you've got Brighton who are in the top 6, you've got Villa that are in the top 6. Is it now going to be called next season like the big 8 and the big 9? And my process of it all is that it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? The Premier League is basically a product with good teams across the board. Anybody can beat anybody. And it just really annoys me when I even hear the phrase big 6, top whatever. It's just really frustrating. So because we're from one of them clubs that technically aren't in the big 6, then I'm all for it. And I think the media have just got to wake up and realise that there are other big teams. Like when they kept showing that stupid graphic, and when Liverpool were out of the top whatever, and then they were in the graphic, and then they're out the graphic, and Chelsea are in 11th and they're not in the graphic, and it just fits a little narrative, doesn't it? And I think I'm so happy that there's teams like Villa, Brentford, Brighton, Newcastle that are sort of making them think and scratching their heads thinking, what do we do? Where do we go? What do we call it? So I'm all for it, but it really does annoy me because I think what you end up forgetting is big clubs like Villa, like what have won massive trophies, and Spurs, that they've won the League Cup in like, what was it, early 2000s, and that's all they've won that's of any significance. So it just frustrates me. So that's my little rant on it.
Ryan, you look in there like you've got some thoughts. Enlighten us.
I'm completely with Luke. He's spot on there. Nailed it. I think this big 6 started from the breakaway league, wasn't it? The greedy 6, should we say? And it's sort of evolved from there. But like Luke, likes of Tottenham, like just because they've got a nice fancy stadium and they're in London and they've had a couple of Champions League campaigns in the last few years. The history of our club and clubs like Everton that have won stuff, clubs like Nottingham Forest that have won 2 European Cups. You know what I mean? There needs to be more respect shown across the board for every team competing in this league, and I just feel like we've really rattled the media, rattled Sky that we're in 6th place, that we've made them uncomfortable. Like Brighton have made them uncomfortable. Newcastle, they're not making them as comfortable because of their owners and what's going on there. It's like Manchester City, isn't it? When they come in, it was all eyes are on, and they're going to be spending big, and that attracts like the media. But for football clubs that are being run correctly, like Aston Villa, like your Brightons, like your Brentfords, there needs to be more respect put on our names, and I'm really glad that we are upsetting it, and long may it continue. And I'd love nothing more now than to get in the Europa League. If that upsets them more, and that Chelsea miss out, or a Liverpool miss out, and Villa and Brighton are in it, and they say, oh, well, who would watch a Europa League game if it's Villa and not Liverpool? Well, it will still draw attention to the games, and Sodom. Let's get in the mix.
Well, Justin, you've probably, out of all of us, experienced Villa in better periods, especially me. I've been rubbish most of my life. But has it always been the case that Villa have been underdogs in situations, particularly with the media, or has it did we kind of go under the radar and kind of fall off a ledge during some of the darker times? But in the previous glory days, we had a little bit more respect.
We had masses of respect when I was a kid, talking 40 years ago now, and it was the big four back then. I was just trying to write down what it used to be. And off the top of my head, it was us, Everton, United, I think Spurs. So the sort of dominant clubs that you've seen now, like Chelsea's and City, they were nothing clubs when I was a kid. When I think there was a stat before Arsene Wenger took over at Arsenal, we'd won more trophies than Arsenal. So, we've got to get away from this elite club mentality, I think, now. The problem is, with, like Ryan brought up, I was going to bring up the European Super League, we've got to put it up them, honestly, because the way they conducted themselves, thinking they were above everybody else in British football, just because they'd had a period of success. Like you've all said, there's been plenty of clubs over the last 100 years that have had fantastic periods of success. And up until recently, not one of them clubs has said, we are better than the rest of you, we are going to bugger off and set up our own league. Because that's not what it's about. It's about competing in England in the top flight for the title. Now, at the moment, we've got a few clubs disrupting, and I put them into two categories. You've got clubs that will have good one-off seasons, which we saw with Leicester. We've seen a bit with Brighton. We've seen with Brentford. And with all due respect to clubs like that, they'll have a shelf life. They'll either have one good season, two good seasons, if they're lucky, three good seasons at the top end of the Premier League. And they're going to fall away, naturally fall away, because of loads of other factors that you can factor in. I class us different, and I put Newcastle in the same category simply because of two things: ownership, money we've got, and history and fan base. Us and Newcastle have a real opportunity over the next 2, 3, 4 years now to absolutely smash that big six to smithereens, and I can't wait for it to happen. I can't wait for Sky to have to talk about us like we mean something in the country, not an afterthought. We're not going to be on Sky and they'll talk about everybody else before us. The amount of times I've watched a Villa game and they cut to the game after because it's one of the big six and they talk about them first, it really pisses me off. And I think it's time for clubs like Villa that have got everything all of those clubs have ever had to be taken notice of. And we're having to batter this door down now. And we're battering it down because we've got a supreme manager who's doing unbelievable work, and we've got ownership now that has got the ability to compete with the best in this country. And it's not going to be easy because we're getting into a place now where if we do get European football, the only other way to improve is to get Champions League football and then go for the title. That's the two things left. You've got European football, then you want the Champions League, and then you're going to want to go for the title. Now, to do that, it's going to take a phenomenal effort of everything going well, money and everything. But as a club, we are more than capable, and I think Newcastle are as well. We've put ourselves in position now to compete with the biggest clubs in this country. And I think it's something that we will be doing over the next few years, and we deserve, and people are starting to talk about us now because they're having to talk about us. Some of them you feel like they're having to do it through gritted teeth, and it's embarrassing. Yeah. They're embarrassing themselves. National media, the fan media is the way it's got to go now, because national media just do not take clubs like Villa seriously, although they are having to now, and I am all for it.
Do you know, I'll touch on one more thing that's just got me thinking, is that I feel like the Premier League over the last, say 10, 15 years, to me, there's always been quite a big golfing class between the top four and everybody else. But I don't know, I've just got this weird feeling now that because there's so much money in the game and certain clubs, everybody sort of seems doing things a little bit differently, aren't they? You've got teams like Brighton whose recruitment is sensational, the same as Brentford. Villa, a little bit different to those two clubs. I just feel like now, look at what's happened at Chelsea. They've gone out and spent absolute millions in one window and bought all technically the best players that could possibly get in and around Europe. And it's done absolutely nothing to their team because they don't have a good enough manager. And the whole setup just isn't right. I look at Spurs, they ain't got a really very good manager. But then I look at all the teams that are sort of like up and coming, more vibrant. De Zerbi at Brighton, Frank at Brentford, Emery at Villa, Eddie Howe's doing a great job at Newcastle. So to me, there's a bit of a shift in the way in which they're now being coached. And I think that's having a big difference, because you look at that league now and there's like 8 or 9 really good teams that can beat absolutely anybody in the league. So I think that gap between a top 4 and what's left, it is really getting small. I mean, Liverpool below Villa, and we started the season terrible. I'd say I think we could finish above Spurs this season. We're going to finish above Chelsea. So that next stage now for Villa, and just thinking of Villa in general, is quite important, because we're not far away from them. I really don't think we're that far away. So
I think just going back to what you've nailed it there, Luke, as usual, and it's why the Big Six wanted a close shop. It's why they wanted to bugger off. It's why they wanted to super size their income, because what they didn't want to happen and what they tried to stop happening was the playing field being evened. Because once the playing field's evened, once everybody's got the same money, once everybody's got a multi-billion-pound owner and can access that money, all of a sudden their dominance is under threat, and they don't like it. And they won't like this. They won't like Newcastle finishing in the top 4 if it happens, or us finishing in the Europa League. They won't like it. Pre-Sky money,
50% of that top 6 could not finish in the top 6
Yeah.
this season. The
But
following season after they tried to make the breakaway.
But before Sky came into the mix, what you had to do was you had to rely on a manager.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going back to Graham Taylor days. So what you had to do is you had to get a top manager who could coach, and then he would then go and handpick a squad of players, albeit a smaller squad than you have nowadays, and he would have to coach them to try and win the league. And now one season we'd finish runners up, next season we'd be halfway down the league, because it was down to coaching. It wasn't down to how much money you had, and it's almost going full circle, albeit with lots of money now. But once everybody's got that money, once everybody's on the same playing field, it becomes harder for Chelsea. Like you say, they've had to spend ridiculous amounts of money to keep up, and they haven't done it. Liverpool are going to have to spend stupid in the summer now to try and catch up with teams. But once all that money's a level playing field, then you're relying back on who's got the best manager. And currently, we've got one of the best managers, so they better look out, because we're coming for all of them.
He's not going anywhere.
Excellent fighting talk.
Hannah wanted just a little brief little chat, and
you dropped a grenade in
episode.
That is exactly what I wanted. A nice, healthy discussion. You all make brilliant points. You all make the points I wanted to hear. I think I touched on in the intro to that section about the word competition. I think for the health of the league, the health of English football, to have 10 or 12 teams in the Premier League that are very good is so much better than having 4 or 5. Even money wise, it'll attract more money to the game if you've got a load more really competitive, really compelling teams. So in my opinion, bring it on. We're ready to disrupt. We're going to be the disruptors, and it's an exciting time. But on that note, I think it's time we bring things back down a level, and we'll do our score predictions for Brentford. So I'll start off, considering I'm in the hot seat this evening. And I think I've got to go for it, haven't I? I'm going to go for a 2-1. Like we saw in head-to-head, none of these teams have done an away win in the Premier League, so we're going to change that. But I do think Brentford are good going forward, so maybe not the clean sheet. Ryan, what do you think?
I did see our friend AVSC Stato put one up, and I think it's something like 1949 or something like that, 1946 since we last won at Brentford. But we have the curse smasher, don't we? A man that just loves to smash all these curses out the park. So I am going for a 2-0 win.
Love it. Love it. Luke?
I am also going for a 2-1 win. I think it'll be a tight game. I think it will be a tactical battle. We will do our predicted lineup as well, so we'll have a look at the threat a little bit more. But I think think we're on it at the minute, aren't we? We're absolutely on it. So you can't predict anything other than a Villa win, can you?
No.
Really? So
No.
I mean, there you go. So Justin, go on then.
It's
I'm
easy for me.
looking
innit?
for something.
I
Something
predict to win
bold.
every week. Then I say it's easy at the moment. Yes, it's as our glorious goalkeeper Emi Martinez said as he came off the pitch. 7 cup finals left. This is cup final number 1, and it's going to be a 3-1 Villa win.
Nice.
We'll
Nice.
take it. We'll take it. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. As we mentioned, please leave your thoughts, comments, feelings down below and drop us a like. Go on. And we'll see you very soon. Up the Villa.
Villa.
Up there.